Hello, I'm so glad you could join us for this special episode with Melissa Thompson. She is going to walk us through every single type with boundaries. And oh my gosh, during Intimacy Month, we need to know how to draw close. We need to know how to draw boundaries. This episode is going to help us to do both because you guys might remember Melissa, who was one of our most popular guests ever, Enneagram 2. She talked about attunement with us. I think that was our highest rated show ever, and she truly knows how to delve deep. But this woman, oh my gosh, she is also so good with boundaries. I am telling you, she is not only a self defense instructor, she is Gottman level 2 trained herself. She is also AACC certified. She's Enneagram and marriage certified. She's a mama of 4. This woman has it covered and she's fun and balanced. So she's going to give us a lot of that relational joy as well as just that sense of like, where do I end and where do I begin? And in my marriage or relationship, how can I make sure that I'm honoring who I was made to be as well as lift off for our relationship? So don't worry, we're not going to leave your spouse in the dust. We are also not going to leave you in the dust. We want you healthy and balanced as much as possible. And that is where we're off to today in just a couple minutes. I want to remind you, Melissa's info is in the show notes if you need more intense one-to-one training or just some time with her as a coach. I also want to let you know that I hope you're in the midst of summer balancing with us. We're almost through summer here at E&M. If you're listening live, we've kind of just passed the Barbieheimer, I think is what people are calling it, weekend. I cannot get the Dua Lipa song out of my head all day. Dance the night away. I've had fun with these big blockbusters, including Mission Impossible, and our family is now officially like has way too many AMC points. So, but I have really enjoyed that because I don't know if you're like me, but you're beating the heat perhaps in your state or part of the world, then you get it why we've been to a lot of movies. So that was very refreshing. But we're also working hard out there. And I hope you are also relaxing because I know we've had to maintain balance too on those days where we're like, oh my gosh, we're working so hard, sending kids to camp, sending kids to little parks, play dates, all that stuff. But also knowing we need our time as adults. So whether you're balancing parenting or marriage with all of this, as Melissa talks us through each type, just keep in mind that you don't forget your marriage because I know that as I was trying to balance everything last week, I was really good socially, and so was Wes. And then I was really good with the one-to-one, or excuse me, the self-pres instinct. And I was at my Pure Barre class every day, and I was, really getting time to journal. And then I was like, Wes, we sucked at one-to-one. We totally let it go and not glow, go. And it was really bad. And we didn't like each other very much. And he was like, you know what? We really did. And just literally 2 hours time to just really reflect instead of teens running in and out. I mean, it was hard to get even that 2 hours. I came out of my shower and the girls were waiting on my bed for me. Mom, let's have another movie night. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want this so bad. And it was very, we were totally called out and embarrassed when in the Barbie movie, they were like watching Jane Austen's BBC version for the 7th time. And I'm like, you know what? Girls, I need time with your dad. And I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable, but like we need time together or we're not going to be able to do this long haul. So they're like, oh, got you. Like we get it. We're part of the family team. So don't be afraid to set those boundaries and know that I never want to come alongside as like this person who isn't also in the trenches with you. I am right here balancing. It's up and down, in and out, and we're all doing that. And as I was finishing up the Jane Austen book I was reading last week, an autobiography, I was really laughing out loud when I saw that she herself also said, I hate perfection. I cannot do perfect. It makes me grossed out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I always say that too. So I guess that's why I like her books is we're real here. So just know that we're in it with you, but we're very intentional to balance those instincts. And that was really quickly able to be seen when I just said, oh my gosh, we're off on our boundaries. Like we're giving too much socially and we're taking our time for ourselves and our workouts, but like, where are we? So just make sure you're leaning in for that and doing that with me. And if you need that intention, we're going to be opening up our collective very soon so that you can come on in with even more intention with us too. But I need that as a busy type 7 and he's the busy one. I will leave off without relational care if I don't truly plan it in. So just know that you're not alone if that happens to you or your spouse, and know that we're bringing you back for refreshment right here today with Melissa so you can set the boundaries and save time for you, for your relationship, and of course, for your beautiful glow and giving in the world. All right, let's talk to Melissa. Today, I'm joined with Melissa. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me to do this with you today. I love doing these with you.
Oh, you are one of our most popular guests. And shout out to you for that, Melissa. You have such a gift for coaching. And I'm so thankful and grateful to have you not only here on our global team, but also on our local team.
I I love being a part of this team. Our family, the group that we have here is just amazing. It's amazing. Love what I do. I love what I do.
Oh, you are so fun, and you are an in-person kind of person, as we were talking about when we got on here. So I know God made you social, and yet that brings us to this space of you have had to work to become very good with boundaries because you're so social, I would imagine.
I've had, yes, being a 2 on the Enneagram, I've definitely had to create some strong boundaries in my life. I had no idea what boundaries were. I didn't know how to implement them. And boundaries were scary for me because when I was younger, those boundaries were crossed a lot of times. And if I tried to create a boundary for myself, that meant conflict. It meant getting in trouble.
Mm.
It meant abandonment and rejection. So to me, a boundary was very unsafe. So in my practice with my clients, boundaries are a huge topic for me. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, but it's something that I want to offer to my clients in a safe way. I want them to be able to learn how to draw the boundaries because it's not a language that you learn immediately. It's something that you have
Yeah.
to keep practicing to become fluent in.
Mm.
And that's what I do with my clients. I want to provide that safe place for them to start drawing those boundaries in their relationships of all kinds.
Mm.
So that's super important.
That's beautiful, and you really speak my language, girl, when you say safe. So, I love that that's part of who you are, and I think that that's something that 2s and other heart types, 3s and 4s listening, we're going through actually a deep dive on all the types of boundaries today, excitingly, but I think everyone's, especially in that heart triad, listening to you say that because, as you said, it can feel threatening if you're asking people to set boundaries that don't feel safe to them, right?
Very much so. Like I said, it's scary for most people.
Mm.
When I talk to my clients, when we're doing couples work or even individual work, and I talk about, okay, well, where are your boundaries? Oh, I don't, yeah, that's a subject that we need to talk more about. I mean, it's a very, like I did a post the other day and said that there's a spectrum for boundaries. You either have no boundaries or you
Mhm.
have extremely rigid boundaries. And we want to try to find that in between. Now,
Mm.
sometimes having no boundaries with somebody means that you have a very healthy relationship with them and you don't really need to implement those boundaries because they have healthy boundaries as well.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
there's a spectrum in the boundaries. But when I look at that spectrum, usually it's because there's a lot of codependency, there's been a lot of abuse and trauma and type of things where they haven't learned to have those healthy boundaries. And like I said
Mhm.
before, it's more negative for them than it is a positive.
That makes sense. So I love how today, with our tips and with if you guys need a coach, Melissa's amazing and she does virtual and phone as well. Um, she is giving tips that will help each Enneagram type to feel safe while they give them. And then, of course, you guys can titrate the tips as you need to implement them in your lives. So thank you, Melissa. Your time is so valuable, and I'm so thankful for you today.
I'm just happy to share this time with you. This is exciting.
Yes, it is our summer fun. Well, let's talk about each of the types. How about we begin with type 1 and boundaries and something you've noticed about how ones can work in this area?
Okay, I think, well, ones, I would say that they ones are fabulous because I think they are in a place where they want to make the world better, right? With their boundaries. And I think they have very strong boundaries.
Mm.
And sometimes that can come across a little bit critical, seeming, or controlling to their partner. And so I think if we're in a relationship with a 1, I think it's important to understand where they're coming from as
Mm.
far as for how they go about creating those boundaries. And I think that they create those boundaries to have a better understanding of the relationships for that safety for themselves.
So they sort of need some autonomy. And when they're setting the boundaries, it's not out of, I can't be with you right now. It's, I have to get certain things done and then I'll come back to you when I can.
Correct. And I think boundaries, I mean, with the one, I think their core fear is of what failure, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to seem like they're inadequate or they're failures, and they create those boundaries, so that they don't, so that they know what their guidelines are for that in the relationship. Like I said, I remember hearing something one time, a one saying, somebody was in a relationship with a one, and they're like, oh my gosh, when I'm pulling out of the driveway, they get mad at me even if I don't have my seatbelt on in the driveway. And
Mm,
I understand how that can seem critical, but look at it this way. They're protecting you. They're wanting to protect you. They're rule followers. So they
mhm.
want to protect you. And instead of looking at as them being critical or harsh of you, think about it in a positive way. And if they're being that critical of you, think about how critical they are of themselves
Mm.
in you.
And I think that's a cool way to say if a one sets a boundary with you and says, I can't, for instance, drive with you unless you're taking this more seriously, then you guys might have to form some different alliances around that relationship. Like, okay, well, we don't let this happen again for this reason. Maybe hopefully you want to wear a seatbelt, but that you figure out what parameters you guys need so that you can still have a relationship. And I think that's okay to say, where you're rubbing really harshly, maybe take breaks now and again.
Correct. And I think a good way to help them in those boundaries
Mhm.
is to remind them that they are innately good. Because I don't think,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say core fear. I think I said that wrong. Their core fear is not failure; it's a being bad, right?
Yeah.
And that are rule followers. And so I think when you're in a relationship with a one, it's remind them you are good. You are good. You are a wonderful person. And all the attributes, the boundaries that you have, they are healthy. And I think it's good to be able to articulate to them. They are a little bit harsh. So maybe we can soften some of those boundaries so we're not so rigid all of the time. And I think it's
Mhm.
okay for one to learn how to be able to say no to certain things
Mhm.
too. And so I think that's huge for a one.
Yeah. And I did resonate when you said ones also have failure as something they don't like, because that is huge for ones that they don't understand the concept sometimes of failing forward. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head in both of those regards, that they can work towards being more gentle on others and themselves, and their partner can work on, I love what you said, just really see that your one desires improvement. Because when you frame it that way, it can be so much healthier than you getting lost or stuck in the thought that your one wants vengeance on you, or that they're trying to get you. I know I've done that before, and it's been so helpful to me to be able to say, oh, Wes desires my good. So you nailed it. Let's talk about twos. Your
Okay.
type.
Huh. Well, like I said before at the beginning, we don't have an unhealthy two that is unaware, takes on more of the codependent tendencies, and they don't have a lot of the boundaries, and their boundaries are tied up. I think their identity, our identity, is tied up in other people and what we do for the other people and the way that they receive us. We give to a point of exhaustion, and that's when we don't have healthy boundaries.
Mm,
And a lot of times I will tell my twos, it's no is a complete sentence. You
mm,
don't have to exhaust yourself for other people. It's learning to find that fine line and that balance of, yes, I want to serve other people and I want to do for them, but also I need self care for myself. And I think twos, I know for myself for a long time, I needed permission to do things for myself and
mm,
to let the ball drop for other people sometimes. And that fear of not being loved
mm,
in our relationship keeps us in that place of constantly serving and giving
mm.
and doing and extending ourselves beyond sometimes what we're capable of doing. And then we become resentful, and then the ego takes over and
Mm.
be resentful because we're depositing, but nobody is depositing back into our bank account. But
Mm.
there's a pride that comes in that too. I do all this, I do this. And there's almost, I think the unhealthy too, there's almost like a victim mentality where I do and I do and I do and I do, and I put myself out there and I'm exhausted and I'm working and I'm the one doing all of this.
Mm.
Um, but they tend to forget that they don't have to do all of that.
Mm.
And it's hard for a two to come to a place where they can accept that. But
Yeah.
once they do, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see a two have those healthy boundaries.
Oh, I agree. And I love when I get to see twos do that. I love knowing that you're teaching them to do this. I love seeing you set boundaries. And so thank you. You are such an expert around this. And I love that you teach your twos that no is a complete sentence also.
No is definitely a complete sentence.
Anything you want to add to two, since I know this is your special type that you are a two.
I want to add that in a relationship with a two, a lot of times we want to help them draw those boundaries. And I watch my couples and I watch them get very frustrated with their partner because their partner almost gives so much to everybody else that they don't give as much to their partner sometimes because they want to give, give, give. And I think that we can't tell a two to stop caring for other people and stop doing for other people. And I
Mm.
think it's good to support them in that, but it's also good to encourage them in a
Mhm.
soft, gentle way. That
Mm.
setting boundaries also means setting boundaries for yourself, not just other people. And so I think that's really important. Like, it's okay, care for these people. I love that you have a heart to care for people and do all of these things, but you also have to set boundaries for yourself so that you don't lose yourself in that.
Mm. Okay.
Doesn't
Oh,
relationship.
that's so helpful. Okay, thank you. What about our type threes out there? I know you have a lot of relationship to three too. We have your one and your three on either side. What do you say to our threes?
Well, the threes are definitely the performer, and they wear many masks to fit their varying
Mm.
roles in lives, right?
Yeah.
And they have a hard time drawing the no boundary with people.
Mm.
And what I've noticed with my threes is that with them being so task oriented, their core fear is to not be worthy, to not be loved.
Mm.
And so a lot of times they do a lot of things extending themselves much like a two,
Yeah.
but they do things being task oriented to gain the approval and appreciation from their partner or from other family members or from friends in the community. And when they don't receive that, they feel very rejected and dejected. And
Mm.
I think it's good to be able to see how vulnerable they are, but sometimes with their core motivation being admiration from other people.
Mm.
If threes aren't careful, they can tend to believe that their constructed self is their authentic self.
Mm.
Most threes, they do have ample boundaries to help them respond appropriately to their audience. And their core fear is being insignificant or a failure.
Mm.
And to cope, they look for ways to be valuable. Their core motivation is admiration,
Mm.
again, task oriented. And if a three tries to make everything perfect for someone they love, and then the task isn't appreciated, the three will feel like they have failed and that they are not.
Mm.
And so I think that it's good to remember in that relationship with a three, they are wonderful to have on your side. They get things done. They are great leaders. They usually look good. They're very organized.
Mm.
Um, and so, you just want to help them to not allow others to disrespect them by
Mm.
taking advantage of what they can do and how much they can do. Um, we want to encourage them to find things that make them happy and bring joy to them, not a task for somebody else. I think that's really important. And
Mm.
they don't have to take on more than they can handle. And that's really hard for a three as they are task oriented.
Aw, that's such a gift to them to hear. Thank you, Melissa, for them to hear. I don't have to be on all the time. I get to rest too. And that's not only okay, but what I need to do. That's enlightening.
It's important to remind them that they are loved regardless of their accomplishments.
Hmm.
I
Yes,
think
you guys are loved.
loved, loved and safe. They don't have to prove themselves to us. Again,
Yes, thank
kind of
you.
a permission. I think the heart needs permission for a lot of things.
Yeah, that heart type in them says you are here for others and you are loved because of others. And so if they don't show you, your worth seems to go down. And thank goodness you remind them you're still just as worthy, even if somebody else is having a bad day and can't affirm you. That's important. I'm glad you're saying you don't have to push even harder in those moments.
Correct. Correct. I think that we need to be softer with a three. The threes that I have experienced, even within their own family unit, they will try to make everything perfect at home for, let's say, a child that isn't as engaging. And when that child isn't engaging, the parent feels extremely rejected and hurt,
Mm,
and they can't figure out what they're doing wrong or why they aren't lovable to their child.
mm,
And the things that I have them look at is we all have different personalities and identities and characteristics that God has given us. And the way that one child responds to them versus another child, or a lack of, is not a representation of their love for their parent. They just have a different way of communicating that. And just because the three has a certain way to communicate that love doesn't
yeah.
mean that every family is going to, or that it's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that they might have to work with some different temperaments, even as they are looking to do their own growing. That's huge. And their own boundary setting, know that people might have some boundaries with them too.
Correct. Correct.
Mm. Oh my gosh, this is so helpful. And I think of all the three parents who do that and knowing so many of them love out of that sense of like, I want to teach you how to be a good adult. You're reminding them, let your kids teach you who they are, even as you give that gift. What about our type fours?
Our type four is the romantic.
Oh.
The fours live for relationships and
Hmm.
connection despite believing that they do not belong.
Yeah.
And where they lack boundaries, they may fear saying no to an unreasonable request in order to maintain the relationship as they fear rejection. Their
Mm.
interpersonal boundaries are they feel flawed, they feel others possess qualities that they lack, and all of this despite being creative and unique and emotionally honest and highly intelligent.
Mm.
So I think with a four, how we can help a four with boundaries is to help them see that they are not too much, um,
Mm.
that they have an agency in this world. And it's okay to be misunderstood, that this isn't a failure on their part.
Mm.
They don't have to conform in order to fit in with their unique creativity and the way that they think and the way that they see the world. They aren't responsible for others' emotions. I think
Wow.
a four will um, change a little bit to conform to, even though they're very strong, I think, in what they think and what they believe, they do have a tendency to conform if there is something stronger, a stronger personality for them because of that need for connection and wanting to
Mm.
fit in. And that
Wow.
they can take time. They are thinkers. They need time to process their feelings. And I think with being in a relationship with a four, I think it's important to say, I understand that you need time to go think about this process, the conflict that we've just had, the conversation that we've had, the big issue, the trauma that's just happened. Like, I want to give you your
Mm.
space. I often say that the fours are distancers when it comes to that, because
Mm.
they do need to take the time to process that,
Mm.
their feelings and thoughts.
This is very honoring to the four, and I'm really grateful to hear this. Most of the time, I feel like people say the exact opposite to a four, like, you don't have to be unique. And I appreciate that. But I really like what you're saying today is allow yourself to be unique and don't feel like you have to conform to everybody. Allow yourself some space and time to withdraw. And it doesn't mean you don't come back, but you honor that how you were made was to take some time to do that. So I love that. That's so healthy.
It's thank you. Thank you. I think it is important to cherish their authenticity, and I think they
Mm.
need to be appreciated for that, definitely.
Mm. Hmm. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I know fours are just like, yes. Okay. And spouses, yes, lean into that. She's wise. She and I both have fours in our lives. And that's why we're like, yes, we know this is true. Like, not often said. Okay. So type fives, tell us about what they can do for boundaries.
Type fives for boundaries. Let's see. They type five are researchers, so they do have very strong boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they can be very rigid at time based on the research that they've done. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say that they lack boundaries at all.
Mm-hmm.
They could work on softening their boundaries. They are private and independent and very analytical.
Mm-hmm.
Fives bring many strengths to relationships, such as insight, curiosity, intellect. However, they have shallow they have a shallow capability or capacity to handle other people's emotions in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and they do sometimes lack some personal, like interpersonal boundaries for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They easily detach from their own emotions when they feel their environment is overwhelming. This
Mm-hmm.
helps them find freedom when the world feels intrusive or neglectful. And they may replace consuming knowledge with human connection, as others may seem too much for them at times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the young five learned regulation of needs being met are based on many not having their caretakers be responsive to their needs. And they found that regulation was necessary. And they used knowledge to fill that space up.
Mm. Yeah,
So
thank you. Because I think people get really upset with fives. So it does help on this one, I think, to pause and say that, to say this is usually why this happened to them. Because it's, as you said, can be an extreme type with a shallow capacity. So that's great that you remind us there's a history here.
there is a history there that goes along with attachment styles too. But I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that is it's important to know the base on those on the types. But I think and the fives can be quite stoic too.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their head a lot, thinking about the knowledge that they have, again, replacing that almost with a pride. Like, I know all this stuff, I've done all this research. And that almost can take the place. It's like a self-preservation where they protect themselves from vulnerability in relationships.
Yes. And do you feel that spouses need to, I mean, how can we honor that knowing we need to and that they were overwhelmed as a child, as well as kind of challenge our fives in that space?
I think it's good to remind them that they are not powerless when it comes to expressing their needs and emotions.
Mm,
Um, I think it's safe for them. Like, we want to provide that safe again, that safe place for them so that they don't want to detach from their emotions. We want to help them soften some of their boundaries that they
mhm,
have towards others,
mm,
and remind them that they are brave for showing up despite their fears rather than isolate. Because they
mm,
will do that a lot. They'd rather go into their thinking space, their knowledge, um, and then that creates that safe space for them to detach from other people, um,
mm,
and remind them that their vulnerabilities are a gift, not a burden. I think that's really
mm.
for a five.
Aw, I really like that. That's a great reminder for our fives because they don't want to share their stuff, but it's really a gift to others to get to care for them for just a little while. So if you're a five listening, you don't have to give it all, but give us some so that we can help you, just like honestly, you help everybody else. So I love that you reminded them of that. What would you say to our sixes out there?
Or the supporter. I would
Mm,
say that sixes are concerned with the common good. They are also committed to loyalty and relationships. Most sixes have complex and inconsistent boundaries, and managing them takes a great deal of energy. The six needs boundaries to give them a sense of security. Sixes send out numerous boundary feelers simultaneously in order
mhm,
to determine what might happen next. Um,
mm,
is this
mhm,
person safe or trustworthy, etc. Sixes, they struggle with fear. They struggle to forgive and forget. And to them, forgiveness is a sign of weakness, and they believe they must guard and protect themselves from potentially hurting, hurtful people.
mm. Awesome. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense about how they're trying to be close, but they're like, I have to be on guard. I can't trust people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Being in that relationship with a 6, I think that it's beneficial and helpful, like in the boundary department, just to encourage them to spend time calming their minds a few times a day,
mm,
like
mm,
knowing that they need to take that space for themselves.
mm,
Encourage them to limit their exposure to those who create anxiety in their life. If they're coming home and they're complaining about somebody that's constantly creating anxiety, then encourage them to set some boundaries and to create some space so that
mm,
they're not to struggle with that as much.
mm,
It's okay if not everyone agrees with them that they are safe
yeah.
in that department, and to work on forgiving others. Again, remind them they are safe, and forgiveness does not mean that they are vulnerable. It's actually a strength to be able to
Mm,
forgive people and to just kind of help them walk through that.
okay.
And don't belittle their fears. I think it's really important that we do not belittle their fears,
Mm.
and that we listen to them and that we validate those fears for them.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I don't think sixes at all appreciate if they say, I have thought this through and planned this through, and you're not seeing it. It's like they don't want to hear that you don't believe in them because they do have a lot of good troubleshooting. That's a great reminder.
Yeah.
So if we feel they're maybe complaining too much, you said, make sure that they understand that you care, but maybe you're saying give them a few times of the day so that they can really focus more on their fears and kind of how they can work with them at those few times a day.
Yeah, it's just giving them some time to process through those feelings. Again, the fears that they have. So I think it's important to say we're not going to stay in that, but go take a little bit of time to process through that. Or
Thank you.
let's talk through it. Or let's talk through it.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. Thank you. Well, that's so cool. And our sixes are grateful because they love so hard and they don't want to lose their people. And that's why they don't set boundaries.
Correct. Correct. So I
Mm,
think it's important that we help them in doing
mm,
that, as long as we're creating healthy boundaries ourselves.
mm. Yeah.
Relationship.
Good point. Okay, perfect. That really is awesome. I'm like holding there some space for our sixes listening because
Oh,
I'm like, I know this is hard. And so thank you. Anything else you want to share for our sixes before we move on to sevens?
um, I don't I don't really have anything right now. I I think that they are very unique and wonderful, and I think they do deserve that space. There's a reason why they think the way that they think and they feel the way that they feel. And again, they're called the supporters, so they are very good at supporting other people. And
Mm,
I do it's just honoring them in their space and their time and validating them, but not allowing them to stay there.
yes. Oh, thank you. Good. I love it. Okay. What about our sevens with boundaries? My type.
Well, I know I should be asking you about boundaries.
I talk about it all the time. I want to hear from you. And you can help me, and then I'll add if there's anything.
Okay, that sounds good. The 7 is a wonderful friend, partner,
Mm,
coworker. They are very optimistic. They are driven by adventure, fun, and lighthearted. They struggle to confront their feelings, especially when they perceive that their emotions may be negative. They long for a safe world and choose to see the best in people.
mm,
In their weakness, they can be hard headed and opinionated and have a hard time following through on commitments.
mm,
Often seek the next best experience, which may leave their partner feeling like they aren't good enough. Um,
mm,
so help your partner to understand that peace will come when they embrace the present moment, and help
mm,
them withness to be present.
mm. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing advice for us. That is so hard. And it comes down to so much self soothing to do that because sevens don't often realize that they're an anxious type. So for me to hear you say that is life giving. And I'm very curious as to how you knew that. And I know you have a seven in your tri type, but like that's gold. I hope our sevens are listening hard because that is, you're speaking from inside of the game with me. And I'm like, oh, she knows. And you've also
Well,
worked with me for a while.
I do know a 7, but you know what? I would say that with you, I watch you and your boundaries are amazing. They're strong, they're not rigid, they're
Thank
healthy,
you.
and they're balanced. And I see that in everything that you do. And I am very impressed by that.
Oh, you are such an angel. And at home, I have to do the things you're saying. So I think that's really good. And all the sevens listening, I happen to have a spouse that really does challenge me, and I need that. So I enjoy it, and it works for not getting bored. But I want to encourage spouses of sevens to make sure that you share your thoughts and opinions, especially if we have a lot of nines in the world. So share and be present and come in with your seven so that they can have somebody to engage with that will challenge, like Melissa said, strong ideas. That's important in that one-to-one bond, that you guys are that close that you can say, hey, I see the world this way. And as you were talking about earlier, I think it's the same thing here when you mentioned type ones. This is a great one for people to say, there are other opinions out there. Let's see what they are. And even for that spouse, the seven has good opinions too. It's just they might not be shared, and you don't want your seven to throw theirs at you, right?
I think you, I think as a 7, you have fabulous opinions.
Oh, thank you. Well, my teenager didn't think so today when I was railing at her about something, and she did her classic, calm yourself. And that's
Oh,
my 4. And I'm just like, okay, but like, I know I'm right about this. I'm like, you can't take on too much because you're a 4. And like, I didn't say 4, but I was like, if you take on too much next year, like, no. She's just like, calm yourself. And I'm like, she's like, you're mad at me. And I was like, I'm not mad at you. I just like, I'm going to be opinionated here. So we just have our little banter and sort of like an old couple. Um,
well, you've got, as a 7, there's lots of thoughts and ideas that are going all the time for you. So
yeah,
yeah.
true. And so Wes and I do that. I think I do that with Jack, my 6. He has a contrarian spirit. We all do that. Melody, when she's really in her 9, though, can rise up too. So we'll talk about 9 soon. But talk about 8s with us. What can our 8s do to really rise up into their healthy boundary setting?
Well, the challenger, they are excellent leaders, and they
Mm,
charge of their environment well. They have a knack for knowing how to get things done. Eights
mm,
by nature have very strong or rigid boundaries, and they are
mm.
highly passionate about what and who they believe in. And 8s, I think, are often misunderstood as they can come across controlling. And so this is because they have a fear of being controlled, and
Mm.
controlled makes them feel weak and vulnerable. And the
Okay.
8 has a motto, sort of say what you and
Mm.
mean what you say, right? So the 8 does not fear conflict. Sometimes I think they enjoy the conflict. It makes it feel like it's almost like a way of connecting with people, is having that little bit of conflict. In fact, I had a client say the other day that they love conflict, um,
Mm.
and they don't necessarily, not high conflict, but they do enjoy the game of the conflict and the engagement with other people. And it's because it creates that engagement with them, that they
Fascinating.
in intellectual engagement. So I would say that, to help the 8, to soften, you want to help them soften their boundaries and remind them that they are not vulnerable for doing so.
Mm.
I think that's
Mm.
important to remind them not everyone has to agree with them. That's okay too.
Mm.
And that they don't need to be the solver of all problems. They need to allow others to have room to try to solve their problems too. And it may not be done exactly the way the 8 would do it. And that's okay too. A lot of times I'll say, you have from point A to point B, and one type is going to go straight to it. Another type is going to go loop around and backwards and up and down and all over, but you're all going to get to the same point. It's just going to be, the route is just going to be different, but the end result will be the same. And that's
Mm.
okay. It's okay to sit back sometimes and say, okay, go ahead, you do it your way, you know.
Mm.
And what I
Mhm.
try to remind them is there's lessons in things not working out exactly the way that we want them to, in that controlled environment.
Mm.
So, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really hearing you say there's lessons in letting go and for an 8, and I didn't even think of that. Like, that's a neat to process for them because you're right, they probably could take everything on, but is it good for them? Or is it like when they're in their 2 and, we both know 2s and 8s have that relationship together, but as you said, 2s can wear themselves out, and I've heard that about 8s too. So, I'm glad you're saying you not only can let go, but you need to sometimes.
It's important to be able to let go. And again, failure is not failure. Failure is when something doesn't work out. Like I said, it's an opportunity to learn from that. And again, it's to give grace to other people that you're in the relationship with, or you may be working with. And
Mm.
so I think it's important, though, in a relationship with an 8, though, we do need to be straightforward with them. I don't think we need to beat around the bush. They're not, they're not in the gray area. They don't want to read minds. They want to
Mhm.
know exactly what you're thinking and what you're feeling. I think 8s are extremely loyal and very protective of
Mm.
their partners. Um, and, but again, that protection can come across as overbearing, sometimes controlling.
Yeah.
So it's able to have that dialogue with them to say, hey, I know you love me and I see where
Mhm.
your place is. I see where you're coming from,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
it's harsh. It's harsh for me. So I think it's okay to remind them of that.
Thank you. And that's a really cool reminder for our 8s who are thinking, maybe I'm even remembering right now somebody in my life who I could be a little softer with or a little less, not that I'm not strong because you are a strong person, but to be able to just take a few deep breaths and pause. It's a good boundary for you and for them because you're not as insistent on them to make or break your day. And that helps you with like being too vulnerable in that way. Like, if you put everything onto other people, then you get hurt again and again and again. But if you just put some things on, then you can have some vulnerability.
Yes, I have the 8. That's my stress. That's where I go to
Mm,
stress. But I've
mhm,
tried to turn that into a positive because when I
mhm.
go into my 8, I tend to get more things done. I just try to remember to
Mm.
staying in the heart place where I'm not wanting to control everything, but I use it as a motivation to try to accomplish things a little bit more. I always say I like a board room, and my my wings and my arrows are my board members. And so I go into it
Mm.
like I'm Sybil or something.
Yes, and I know that that's like the analogy of like there's parts of us though, and now we've come to realize that in our personal, we have all of this going on inside. And so I like how you're like, yeah, IFS is actually a thing, internal family systems for those who don't know that label, but it's neat for me to hear you say, I can use my little 8.
Yeah, I do. I like my 8. I mean, I don't like it when I go into my unhealthy space with it because that's when I've lost all control. I feel like, and I'm trying to gain that control. But if I try to tune in and keep it kind of on a healthy spectrum.
Yay. Well, that's good for you as a 2 and other 2s listening to bring the 8 out like that, how you do, where you say, I need the energy. I can't let it take over and dominate. But 8s, you also need your 2 helping energy. So bring it in, just bring it in, pace yourself. Thank you. What about our 9s, our peacemakers out there?
Oh, our 9s. They have very flexible or fluid boundaries or lack of boundaries. They are the peacemaker. They do not like conflict at all. They fear conflict and they actually fear boundaries. Um, and they don't want the abandonment and the rejection that comes with trying to create those boundaries. A 9 is a chameleon on the Enneagram. But the 9, I heard you say this one time and I thought it was really neat. You said something about the 9s are at the top of the Enneagram. So they're
Mm,
overlooking all, the whole,
yes,
all
sir.
of the numbers, all of the types, right?
Hmm.
They are great at being chameleons and being adaptive in conversations with all of the types. And I think they can relate to all of them very well, but a lot of that's because they're really good active listeners and they don't
Mm.
their opinion is necessary. So they are very good at supporting other
Mhm.
people and their needs and what their wants are. Um,
Mm.
They can
Yeah.
see all sides of the conversation though when they are, and I think that's a strength that they have. When they're talking to somebody,
Yeah.
they can see all sides of the conversation. And they process that information, and they may not give their answer because they don't feel like it's needed or important. But they definitely can understand and they can relate. I say nine sometimes with boundaries. It's like you have a property and you want to put up a fence, but you can't put up the fence properly unless you know what your property lines are. And so I think
Mm.
it's important for nines to understand the value of their opinion, of their feelings, what their needs are, that they do have a say in where they go. And I think it's important too in a relationship with a nine to not ask open-ended questions, but
Mm.
more multiple choice type of questions. Like, would you like
Mm.
to, let's go out to dinner. Would you like to go to A, B, C, or D?
Mm.
A few less options, because I think the open-ended questions are where they feel overwhelmed and then they think that
Yeah.
fine. I don't know. I don't care. Whatever, wherever you want to go, that's fine with me. And so if we ask them those multiple choice questions and they have answers to pick from, I think that helps with them as they're
Mm.
starting to learn to work on being able to create some boundaries for themselves.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. Well, that's a great way to say it. And I feel like our nines listening are like, yes, we are so ready to love people, but we don't always know where we end and somebody else begins. And just you giving the permission for them um to really stand up and exert who they are with some options and choices is still a way for them to get to know themselves. And thank you for saying that to partners. Like, this is a person who hasn't had a chance sometimes to really develop their boundaries. So help them to do that. And then I think with time, they start to really know what they do like. And it might be less about options and more about us becoming listeners. Now, I wouldn't have said that a little while ago, but just as I've been working with nines now for years, I'm going, okay, after a while, sometimes they really do get to know faster what they want.
they are very malleable, and I love working with, and I love teaching them boundaries because they and without any, and they feel like everybody walks over them and they feel like they don't have agency anywhere and that
Yeah. Mm.
nothing that they want or need matters. Now
Mm.
everything that everybody else wants and needs they get, but what
Yeah.
their own needs and desires they have no clue. And so what I will have them do a lot of times is I will say, I want you to write down, like, we'll take a certain situation or relationship and let's write down some very specific boundaries that you want to have, that you would desire to have in this relationship, but you have a
Mm.
fear in speaking. And so they'll write down those boundaries and then we'll talk about them, and I'll say, what is your greatest fear in that boundary, and will you survive your greatest fear if you create this boundary? And the
Wow.
answer is usually yes. Yes, I
Mm.
will survive. And so I'll have them start practicing like small little things at home. Like, you know what? I don't like it when you do this. Um,
Mm.
I'm not comfortable with it. Or
Wow.
I really don't, you know what? I know we always order pizza, but really I hate pizza and I don't want to eat pizza anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I do love pizza. I'm not saying anything, nothing against pizza. But
Yeah, yeah, you're like, "Not
you
really
know,
though," but yeah, I get
creating
that.
it's learning to use your voice. It's for
Mm.
them to use their voice. And once they do start to use their voice and they start getting comfortable and they learn that language of boundaries, they
Mhm.
become powerhouses. They become
Mm.
amazing leaders. But
Yeah.
I love their leadership because it's soft,
Mm.
but it's controlled, and
Yeah.
they learn to not let people take advantage of them anymore. And they
Mhm.
see their worth and they see their identity, and it's not wrapped up in what everybody else wants all the time. And I think that's so powerful for them, because as
Wow.
young children, I think a lot of times they were overlooked, they were ignored, they were
Mhm.
told, shh, being quiet is good.
Yeah.
And so I think they just kind of grow up with this message of, my opinion doesn't matter, being quiet
Mm.
is good, and they become wallflowers. And their opinions are amazing. The nines that I know, when they
Mhm.
speak,
Mm.
it's, what? Tell me more. I want to hear more. The
Mm.
they have is amazing.
Yeah. And I think that those who are less connected to their power, if you're like, I don't feel energized and amazing, really getting in there with your body work and getting that physical fitness can help you to digest and make those opinions a bit, like we said, more vibrant and out there, so that at first you might need those options. And I think all nines might even sometimes still want that, but then to be able to say, I do know, that's empowering. I had a nine say that to me today. And I was like, she's like, if I do my body work, am I going to know which decision to make? And it was a friend, not a client. And I was like, yes. I was like, you are. You're going to have a better idea for sure. Because it's hard when you haven't had a chance to get moving as a nine. So thank you for just empowering them that they have amazing opinions when they're able to give them.
Well, I think they need to be in tune with their body. I think there needs to be some self-attunement too.
Mm,
So if somebody crosses a boundary that a nine may have drawn,
mm,
um, I guess the best way for a nine to know if it's okay or not is how they feel within their, if they're feeling disrespected, or they're feeling not good about that, or if they're feeling angry or hurt,
mm,
be aware of that, to be in touch with that, so that they can, and even keep note of that, so that they can kind of have a, like a reference to go back to and say, when this happens, I feel this way. And that can help them be more aware too, with starting to draw boundaries and just having that self
mm.
awareness too.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good one that I didn't even think of. That is absolutely awesome. Making sure that they not only have the boundaries, but that they can really be supported and empowered and lifted up to make these choices together. Because I think you're right. They might hit some walls at first if they're not prepared well. So you're giving them that attunement with themselves, and I think that's your gift as a two. So thank you, because these tips have been life-giving today. And that's not one I would have even given, because you're really reminding us, like, we can't just be tuned in with our bodies and our minds. We have to be tuned into our hearts too. So thank you, Melissa.
Welcome, you're welcome. I'd like to say one more thing about the nine, because I think that
Yeah.
can take on a passive aggressive attitude when their boundaries have
Mm,
been crossed, because they don't know how to
mm,
speak what
mm,
they're feeling and what their needs are, and to draw those boundaries. And I think if you're in a relationship with a nine and you see that passive aggressive response from them, that there's something underlying happening, like, ask them, give them a voice, give them that space to say, okay, I noticed you're upset. What happened?
mm,
A lot of times a nine will get upset about something that happened or was said to them, and they won't say anything about it, but they will act passive aggressively, because they don't have the healthy boundaries
mm,
and articulate what they're saying. And so I think it's important in a relationship with a nine to be responsive to that, to be sensitive to that, and to say, I I see that you're upset. You're kind of acting passive aggressively. Like, what happened? What
mm,
upset you? I want to give you the space, the safety to be able to talk about that. Even if the nine feels like, well, they're not going to want to hear it, or they're going to get mad at me for saying it. I think it's
mm,
really important to make sure that you do give the nine that space to recognize
mm,
that they're upset about something, and give them that space to be able to talk about what happened, and it not just get brushed under the rug. So it's just really
mm.
that space for them to talk and to have a voice.
Yeah. Thank you for empowering spouses of nines to do that too, so that nines are not left with just themselves to do all the work. There's a lot of nines out there. So there's probably a lot of nine spouses listening, or partners. So it's not easy sometimes to just sit there and listen. But if you don't, you're going to get the passive aggressiveness and stubbornness. So it's in both of your favors. And then if you do listen, you guys get to shine so much brighter together. And that's where Melissa comes in, as she is Enneagram and marriage certified. She is not only that, but Gottman level 2 #1 marriage researcher in the world, certified with his programs,
Incredible.
and has other expertise too, trauma informed, right? So you have a lot to share.
Yes, yes, yes. I did a certified mental health the certification for mental health coaching, and yeah, I I love what I do. The more knowledge I have, the better I am for my clients, and
It's
that's
true.
what I give. I enjoy learning. It wasn't always my strong suit when I was younger, and so I enjoy learning, and I enjoy being able to share that with others. Knowledge is
Mm.
power. I say that all the time. Knowledge is power.
Thank you. It's true. And I think that what I loved was when the American Association of Christian Counselors came out with their program for getting this mental health certification. You jumped on it. And I was so happy about that. So it just blessed me. And now you're blessing all of us. So thank you for embracing all the sides. Melissa does her heart, mind, and body work. And I love how you, I would never say thinking inhibited. You are just so gifted with that part too. So you guys can do it too. That we are doing our work, you can do yours. Melissa is right here for you if you want to do more with her. Melissa, where can they find you if they just want to catch up with you on an interpersonal level?
They can find me on your website, the
Mhm.
Reflection website. I have a bio on there. There's a way that they can connect with me on there. I am on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Um,
Yay.
and attach my handles or something in the notes for that.
Mhm. Perfect. I'm so glad because I know people want to meet you, reach out to you, and they just feel your warmth today. And I think that's why you're one of our favorite guests to have on and most popular guests is you just bring out such an interpersonal glow. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me talk about my favorite subject.
Oh, I'm so glad to. You guys are just in for a treat with her other programs that she shares about too on narcissism online as well. So she has these passionate spaces, and I knew everyone here would relate on her boundaries talk. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Krista, so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and learning boundaries and doing your work, whether you're here in the summer with us or you're in a different season of life. I'm just so proud of you for trying to grow and not giving up and not allowing this season of marriage to get taken over and bogged down by so many to dos that you forget each other. So come back to this. Make sure you come and save this episode if it was meaningful to you. Make sure you leave us a review on Apple because that's really beautiful to see people sharing. It only takes 30 seconds and it means so much to us. And make sure if you need a coach that you find Melissa. She is awesome. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.